In the residential area of Greenwich, morning mist hung low in the air. The Wilson family home stood on a street lined with elegant houses in subdued colors. At the entrance, a small flower bed blooming with seasonal flowers spoke of the residents' gentle care. In one corner of the yard stood Michael's baseball practice net. On weekends, mother and son could be seen enjoying catch together. "Mike, have you finished all your homework?" Linda Wilson called out to her son while cleaning up after breakfast. At the kitchen counter, 10-year-old Michael was absorbed in his chess workbook. Dressed in a simple Banana Republic dress, Linda was ready for work with her makeup perfectly done. "I finished everything yesterday. I have chess club practice after school today," Michael answered without breaking his concentration. His eyes, fixed on the chess pieces, were as sharp as his father's. Yet his expression held a gentleness that his father lacked. 7 a.m. The mother and son's daily routine had begun. Running the dishwasher, preparing lunch boxes, checking backpack contents. She had grown completely accustomed to life alone with her son. "Mom, I'm going to ace next week's math test. That calculation method you taught me really helped." Linda smiled gently at Michael's words. Her son's academic growth was her greatest pride. 2 years ago, when her husband James took a job at Elite Development Group in New York and began living separately, this morning's scene remained unchanged. Her husband, who drove a luxury BMW 7 Series and wore custom-made suits, initially came home on weekends. However, those visits gradually became less frequent. Along with the words, "work is busy," the intervals between his visits grew longer, and now there were months when he didn't show his face at all. Recently, his support payments had become irregular. Last month, he only sent half the expected amount, and Linda had to manage their son's school fees from her own salary. Still, she remained unfazed. As accounting manager at Skyline Realty, she earned a sufficient income. Her work as a CPA was highly valued by her department head, Jennifer Brown. Her meticulous personality and keen eye for detail perfectly matched her accounting work. "Linda, this quarter's financial report is excellent," Jennifer had praised her just the other day. Words from someone with 30 years of experience carried weight. However, something had been bothering her lately. There are suspicious points in Elite Development Group's financial statements. She had been hearing more industry rumors. Every time her husband's company name came up, Linda felt conflicted. As an accounting professional, her instincts were telling her something. "Mom, it's time to leave." Michael's voice brought her back to reality. This morning too, she had to drive him to Greenwich Private School. Her son's private school was one of the most prestigious in the area. "Yes, let's go." Linda smiled as she adjusted her son's uniform collar at the entrance. At dinner time, their conversation overflowed with talk about school, chess, and baseball. They had naturally come to avoid the topic of his father. Still, warmth filled the mother and son's dining table. The aroma of homemade lasagna wafted through the kitchen. Cooking had become an important hobby for Linda and Michael. The occasional emails from her husband contained only business-like content. Among the attached receipts, bills from expensive restaurants had become noticeable. However, Linda never showed her concern to her son. "Mom, will you come watch my game this Saturday?" "Of course. I'm looking forward to it." Michael's eyes sparkled at the talk of baseball games. As street lights began to illuminate, mother and son could be seen cleaning up after dinner in the kitchen. Their life together in the small house was bound by an unshakable bond. On a Sunday during Christmas break, Greenwich was covered in pure white snow. On Maple Street, lined with luxury homes, each house was decorated with elaborate illuminations, creating a holiday mood. Linda's family home was an old-fashioned two-story house tucked away on the street. The building's appearance reflected the history of a distinguished family that had lived in this area for generations. Her parents were away on a Mediterranean cruise, leaving the house in Linda's care for a while. In the living room, Michael was enthusiastically decorating the Christmas tree. The tall pine tree that nearly reached the ceiling was being adorned with colorful ornaments, each carrying years of memories. The fireplace crackled with the warmth of burning logs, and the scent of hot chocolate filled the room. "Mom, this glass angel is beautiful." The ornament Michael held was a family treasure Linda had cherished since childhood. The angel, with its crystal-like transparency, was an antique brought from Germany over 100 years ago. "Yes, it is. Your grandmother bought it when she was my age. Decorating this tree every year is our precious tradition." Linda felt her heart warm during this peaceful time with her son. Michael's serious expression reminded her of herself at his age. "Hey, Mom, is Dad not coming this year?" At the sudden question, Linda momentarily faltered. But she quickly smiled gently and answered, "Dad is busy with work." Just then, the doorbell rang. FedEx delivery. A special holiday delivery. On the white envelope's sender field was a familiar printed line. Elite Development Group. Linda's fingertips trembled slightly as she held the envelope. An envelope with her husband's company letterhead. Such documents had never arrived on holidays before. The envelope's weight suggested something different from usual papers. "What is it?" "From Dad?" Michael tilted his head. His innocent expression made Linda's heart constrict. Linda took a deep breath and opened the envelope. Inside were 3 items. The documents, printed on glossy premium paper, gleamed in the firelight. The first was divorce papers. Legal documents printed in refined font. Her husband's signature was already there. The second was a photograph. In a perfectly composed shot that looked professionally taken, an unfamiliar young woman held a baby. The background was a penthouse apartment. Large windows offered a panoramic view of the Manhattan skyline. Luxury furnishings scattered throughout enhanced the photo's quality. Brand-name furniture, crystal chandeliers, and the latest home theater system. The woman was Caitlin, rumored to be a former model. A new accountant at Elite Development Group. Also active as an influencer with 20,000 followers. Her appearance, with perfect makeup and designer brand clothes, was like a page from a magazine. And finally, a letter. The letter was written in her husband's distinctive handwriting. The characters, written with an expensive fountain pen, oozed arrogance. "Dear Linda, thank you for your long service. There's no need to hide anymore. As you can see in the photo, I have a new family. The child I had with Caitlin is already 3 months old. I have no expectations for our marriage life. Get out with that stupid son of yours. The house is already up for sale. You might end up homeless. This is my final communication. Goodbye, James Wilson. The text exuded arrogance and cruel triumph. The image of her husband commuting to New York in his luxury BMW, dressed in custom-made suits and wearing a Rolex, flashed through Linda's mind. At the same time, the reality that monthly living expenses were delayed and her son's school fees were being affected stabbed painfully in her chest. The moment she finished reading the letter, an unexpected voice was heard. "Mom, this is great." Surprised, she looked up to see Michael beaming. With a calmness beyond his 10 years, her son continued. "Now we have all the evidence. We can expose all of Dad's wrongdoing at his company too." Linda gazed into her son's eyes. There was a clear determination there despite his youth. Strategic thinking cultivated in chess club and observational skills matured by his father's absence shone in those eyes. "Let's sign these divorce papers right away. It's better that we know Dad's true nature." Michael's voice was full of conviction. Mother and son looked at each other and nodded quietly. No words were needed for their understanding. Their years of bonding gave them strength to overcome this moment. They had already made their decision. A professional accountant's intuition and a son's sense of justice. These two forces were about to open the door to a new future. The angel on the Christmas tree watched over them silently. That angel, passed down through 100 years of time, was about to become a witness to a new family story. Linda still held her husband's letter in her hand. But that hand no longer trembled. All that remained was unwavering determination. Outside the window, new snow had begun to fall. As if blessing the beginning of the mother and son's new life, it continued to fall quietly but surely. 1 week after receiving the divorce papers, Skyline Realty's office was entering its busy period with year-end accounting. Outside the window, the Manhattan skyline was beginning to be tinged with twilight. Linda sighed deeply in front of the mountain of documents piled on her desk. Elite Development Group's latest financial report was displayed on the screen. Her professional accounting instincts were signaling something wrong. "These numbers are strange." She frowned while scrolling through the Excel sheet. The method of recording profits was unnatural, reminiscent of accounting practices seen just before major investment banks collapsed during the 2008 financial crisis. "Linda, aren't you going home yet?" Her boss, Jennifer Brown, called out kindly. With 30 years of experience, she never missed changes in her subordinates' behavior. "Jennifer, I have something I'd like to discuss." Linda pointed to the financial report screen. "I suspect serious fraud in Elite Development Group's accounting." Jennifer silently sat next to Linda and peered at the screen. As the accounting department head, she recognized these tactics. "This has a high possibility of being intentional window dressing." Jennifer's expression clouded. "My ex-husband is the financial director of this company." Linda's voice was quiet but full of conviction. Just then, they heard the office entrance door open. "Mom." Michael came running in. It wasn't unusual for him to stop by his mother's workplace after school. But today, there was a sense of urgency in his expression. "What's wrong?" Linda asked worriedly. "Mom, I have something important to tell you." Michael whispered in his mother's ear. It's about the documents I found in Dad's study last week. Linda and Jennifer exchanged glances. There were papers with weird numbers all over them on Dad's desk. I found them by chance while doing my homework. Michael's voice was mixed with confusion. That's not all. Dad always had papers he hurriedly hid when he came home. I saw it many times. Linda took a deep breath. Actually, I had found similar things. She stood up and took out a file from her cabinet. Copies of materials found while cleaning her husband's study. Records of luxury apartment purchases, proof of unnaturally high compensation payments to Caitlin. Everything suggested massive embezzlement. This is serious, Jennifer said with a stern expression. We need to report this to the Securities and Exchange Commission. Linda turned to her son. His eyes held firm resolve. Mom, let's do the right thing. Michael's voice was remarkably composed for a 10-year-old. So no one else gets hurt. That night, Linda and Michael discussed their plans over a late dinner. Evidence of her husband's fraud was spread out on the table. Are you really okay with this? When Linda checked with her son, Michael answered with an unwavering smile. Yes. This is the path Dad chose. Let's choose the right path. Hey, Mike. How did you become so strong? Linda asked while hugging her son. Because I grew up watching you, Mom. Watching you work hard every day. At Michael's words, tears welled up in Linda's eyes. One spring morning in March, a moving truck arrived in Greenwich's luxury residential area. In the Maple Hills district, particularly prestigious even within the quiet residential area. In front of a mansion facing the main street, Linda and Michael were about to take their first step into their new life. Mom, is this house really going to be ours? Michael asked, looking up at the entrance decorated with Italian marble. Yes, it's our new home. Linda's voice was filled with calm confidence. In the 3 months leading up to this day, their lives had moved dramatically. The investigation that began with their whistleblowing to the Securities and Exchange Commission revealed one massive fraud after another at Elite Development Group. The accounting materials Linda submitted and the documents Michael found served as perfect evidence. Mrs. Wilson, we couldn't have discovered such large-scale fraud without your cooperation, the SEC's chief investigator told her. The board of directors made an immediate decision. To protect the company's credibility, they awarded Linda an unprecedented reward for preventing further damage. In addition, as fair property division from the divorce, she received half of her husband's company shares and substantial compensation. This is a victory for justice, Linda's lawyer said with satisfaction. Your calm judgment and your son's courage brought about this result. Having received funds well exceeding several $1,000,000, Linda decided to purchase this mansion after careful consideration. This 4,000 square foot residence was a distinguished property where the conductor of the Greenwich Symphony once lived. In this house, I can raise Michael with room to grow. Linda was confident when signing the contract with the real estate agent. However, there was a deeper intention behind her decision. This luxury residential area was also the social hub frequently visited by Elite Development Group's executives. In other words, this wasn't just a move, but also a kind of statement. That intention became clear one rainy Thursday afternoon. at Elite Development Group headquarters in Manhattan. Amidst normal business operations, a group in black suits suddenly appeared. FBI agents systematically surrounded the building. James Wilson was led away in handcuffs from his magnificent presidential office. The scene was meticulously recorded by media cameras. Former Elite Development Group financial director arrested on suspicion of $50 million embezzlement. All media outlets reported the news simultaneously. Gone was his former luxury suit appearance, and before James, now in standard-issue work clothes, a photograph was placed. It was an image of Linda and Michael smiling in front of their new residence, featured on the social page of the Greenwich Times. Linda, in a mansion? James's voice trembled. This can't be. She was supposed to be homeless. At that moment, his mental state completely collapsed. Supported by guards, he slumped from his chair. As medical officers were called to the interrogation room, the photograph remained quietly on the table. The court trial reached its conclusion in a surprisingly short time. The defendant James Wilson is hereby sentenced to 15 years in prison. The judge's voice solemnly echoed through the courtroom. Caitlin, arrested as an accomplice, was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Her Instagram followers plummeted overnight. Her modeling career completely collapsed. What have I done? Her desperate cry was absorbed into the women's prison walls. Adding insult to injury, an order was issued to confiscate all assets. And what tormented them most was the treatment of their hidden child. The infant will be transferred to a trusted foster home. The child welfare officer announced. Adoption will be considered during the parent's incarceration. In front of the Manhattan courthouse. Amid gathered reporters, Linda commented matter-of-factly. I believe this shows the importance of living honestly. Those words made the next day's headlines. And now, in front of the mansion. Movers carefully carried in furniture. Linda had chosen furnishings that were not flashy but dignified. The aesthetic sense cultivated through their modest life was reflected in the new home's interior. Mike, want to go see your room on the second floor? Linda called to her son. Michael ran up the beautiful stairs. His back no longer showed doubt or loneliness. On the terrace of the new residence, houseplants Linda had carefully nurtured were arranged. The leaves gleaming in the sunlight seemed to be celebrating her new life journey. 1 year later, during the Christmas season, Greenwich's luxury residential area was adorned with accumulated snow and brilliant illuminations. Particularly in one striking mansion in the Maple Hills district, preparations for an extravagant holiday party were underway. Mom, should the angel be a little more to the right? In the living room by the large window, Michael was giving directions. Linda was trying to place the crystal angel inherited from her grandmother atop the 15-foot Christmas tree that reached the ceiling. How's this? When she set the angel in the perfect position, sunlight passed through it, scattering rainbow-colored light throughout the room. Tonight was a Christmas party inviting neighboring residents. Over the past year, Linda and Michael had established a firm position in Greenwich's social circles. I must attend Mrs. Wilson's party, Mrs. Bradley from next door stated when receiving the invitation. Having someone like you in the neighborhood is truly the pride of this district. Indeed, their reputation was remarkable. Linda had been promoted to vice president at Skyline Realty. Her talent for detecting corporate accounting fraud was highly valued on Wall Street. Several major companies had approached her with exceptional headhunting offers. "My mission is to protect corporate transparency," she stated in a business magazine interview. "I believe living honestly will always be rewarded." Those words touched the hearts of many women. Having succeeded through her outstanding abilities, despite being a single mother, she had become a role model for female leaders in the new era. Meanwhile, Michael's growth was also remarkable. At Greenwich Private School, he maintained top grades in his year at age 11. His talent in mathematics was particularly outstanding. In the chess club, he won the state championship. The awards ceremony was featured on the front page of the local paper. "Michael's insight is one of the finest I've seen in my teaching career." His homeroom teacher, Mr. Bryan, gave this evaluation at the parent-teacher meeting. However, his most brilliant achievement lay elsewhere. In this year's Greenwich Young Leadership Award selection, Michael was chosen unanimously. The reason was his Justice Allies project. He had created a system where classmates troubled by bullying and discrimination could seek advice anonymously. "I know how important it is to have the courage to do the right thing." His acceptance speech moved the audience deeply. Meanwhile, the fate of the former perpetrators was miserable. James, serving time in federal prison, was completely isolated. None of his former colleagues ever visited, and no care packages arrived. How did it come to this? He muttered every day in his cell. The luxury penthouse, expensive car, designer suits. Everything had vanished like an illusion, leaving only regret. His post-release prospects were ironically limited to working as a security guard. Now he had no choice but to cling to the very job he once despised. In the women's prison, Caitlin also struggled daily. "My followers, only 100 left." During her limited internet time allowed in prison, she checked her Instagram. Her former 20,000 followers had vanished, leaving only a few who left sympathetic comments. Her family had completely disowned her. "You are no longer our daughter." Those words were written in the final letter from her mother. And the most tragic ending befell their hidden child. The infant was adopted by a devout Christian family in the Midwest. The new parents decided never to tell the child about their biological parents. Child welfare experts supported this choice. "This is best for the child's new life," the assigned social worker concluded. As if shaking off these dark shadows of the past, preparations continued at Linda's new residence. From the kitchen wafted the aromas of party dishes. A collection of special recipes that Linda and Michael had perfected together. Even Greenwich's renowned gourmets had become captivated by their cooking. "Mom, this sauce is perfect." Michael tasted their new pasta sauce. "Thanks to your idea." Linda gently stroked her son's head. Having breakfast on the mansion's terrace had become a daily ritual for mother and son. On clear days, they could see the Manhattan skyline. "Mom, I'm glad we lived honestly." One morning, Michael suddenly said. "Yes, that's right." Linda smiled from her heart. In the mansion's garden, flowers bloomed through all 4 seasons. Linda's gardening skills had become famous in the neighborhood. Her rose collection was particularly spectacular. "These flowers seem to be celebrating our new life too." Linda smiled peacefully while watering the flowers. Through the window, Michael could be seen practicing piano. In addition to chess and mathematics, he had recently discovered his musical talent. He had been invited to join the Greenwich Junior Orchestra and was scheduled to start violin lessons on weekends. In the mansion's study, evidence of Linda's new challenges lined the shelves. Requests to write books on business ethics, invitations for special university lectures, and offers to serve as an outside director for multiple corporations. Let's examine each one carefully, Linda instructed her secretary Jane. And now, as mother and son busied themselves with Christmas party preparations, genuine happiness was reflected on their faces. "Hey, Mike," Linda called to her son. "You've grown into such a fine person." "It's thanks to you, Mom. You taught me the importance of living honestly." Mother and son embraced, gazing at the fireplace flames. There burned endless hope for the future. Outside the window, new snow had begun to fall quietly. Like an angel's blessing, it gently enveloped this happy story of mother and son.